if there really isn't a plan B on this, I think we have to either recover or recalibrate the term missional, but I don't know where we go to if we don't have that. So one is to recognize that we come to an impasse. Is that how Americans would say it? Would say it impasse.
Yeah, it's fair.
Impasse. Yeah. And that's there is no retreat from, there's no way back. What has got us here is not going to get us there. And we simply have to exercise our deepest imagination and I would argue activate our deepest instincts. I would say one of the challenges is please resist the temptation to go plug and play all technical on us. The great danger is that we don't address the fundamental mental model that sustains our current way of thinking. If we keep trying to, sustain that model, and I mean the paradigm, and keep trying to do all kinds of mission, it'll be either co-opted, become plug and play ends up like in 2-3 years' time, we tried that, didn't work, and then you've stuck. So I think that the great challenge is to rethink the paradigm, and I've been on it for years, and I still think it's the issue. But I think so reinvent, but certainly think carefully about the kind of the mental model, and partly because if I just play with the mental model, mental map ideas, that I would argue that most of our maps were formulated in different eras and different times. And I would argue that most of the way, even the American church, and this will be hard for Americans to swallow, but effectively is really a European understanding of the church. The fundamental ecclesiology that we've inherited came from Europe. It wasn't from the Bible. It was the Christendom understanding. And it became all entrepreneurial under America, but the fundamental model, our basic definitions were probably more from the Reformation, if you're Protestant. Which is still, they really didn't grapple with the ecclesiological issue. So, and I think that's the problem. And so I would argue, if to focus the conversation, my approach here would be, I still use the word missional, of course, but because I don't think it's a plan B. Give me a better one. Show me the better way. But I would say I now really focus the efforts on the idea of becoming a movement. In other words, on the ecclesiological issue, to force us to think about how do you embody and express missionality. And I think the missional, the movement is the most, in history, it can't be challenged. I think in history, the movement is our best expression of missionality. And I think, therefore, by focusing on that and the kinds of things that have to change for us to become movemental, I think really focuses our efforts on not just the kind of paradigm, because you need a different paradigm of church to be a movement, but you also have to have different habits, practices, tools that are consistent with movement. And so much of the things we do undermine it. So, yes, it's, I think, a very thorough audit of the prevailing system, find a different mental model. And here's the other thing too, I think, for church planters. Actually, in the Bible, you're never commanded to plant churches. Do you know that? I mean, I can't find that, even though I believe in it, so I don't hear what I'm not saying. But actually, the Bible commits us to gospel planting, and that's come as something prior to church. The problem is when we use the word church, darned if it isn't, we've always got a pulpit, or if you're Pentecostal, it's got some bouncy band in it. It doesn't necessarily, those are just ways of expressing.
Yeah.
But why don't you plant the gospel and let Jesus build the church, right? He says he will. So plant the Jesus story. This is contextualize it and let the church emerge out of what Jesus builds. And I think that's just a useful way of thinking. The other thing I say to people, don't plant churches, plant movements. Begin with the end in mind. And if you want a movement, something that can scale and have huge impact and go the distance and transform society, you've got to design it in to the very foundation. So it forces us to think about the mental model right up front. Don't plant churches. We've got enough of those suckers. We need movements now. Movements will change the world.